What's up, my fellow small business supporters, and welcome to the final installment of the 12 Days of Christmas. That's right, today is the 12th day of the 12 Days of Christmas, which means today is the 12th day of Christmas. As you may know, the 12 Days of Christmas is part of an ongoing series on my channel called Deep Daves, where we dive deep into the lives of guys named Dave, and sometimes dive deep into the buttholes of buttholes named Dave. But today's Deep Dave is actually not going to be about an individual Dave, but rather about a Dave concept. This should come as a shock to none of you, but supporting women in business is one of the biggest goals that I have, not just with my channel, but also with my life. A lot of you probably know that I myself am a woman in business, that I'm a small business owner, and that while I've told you guys that I don't care for gender discrimination or segregation in any way, shape, or form, I do also understand that traditionally women have been underrepresented as some of the leaders of big companies, and that there are systemic and structural issues as to why that happens. Well, a little bit after I started my Deep Dave series, somebody messaged me on Instagram to tell me about this thing called the Dave rule in Silicon Valley, which is basically an inside joke about how, haha, did you guys know that actually in the Silicon Valley tech world there are often more guys named Dave than there are women. So today we're going to dive a little bit into this Dave rule and talk about how it applies both in US Silicon Valley culture and also in startup and CEO culture in the United Kingdom. So thank you so much for sticking with me through these 12 Daves of Christmas. Let's end it on a high note, as high of a note as we can when we're talking about Daves. And let's talk not just about the Dave rule, but also about some ways to support women in business this holiday season.
Dave!
From the standpoint of, ooh, you will not go unpunished.
You guys asked for it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, welcome for the first time. My name is Savvy, and this is Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, which often includes reviewing business-related books or talking about the business side of the publishing world and other things like that. I like to talk about this from my personal perspective, both as an author and as a small business owner. And while we talk today about startup culture and entrepreneurship culture and women in business, I have a really exciting announcement for everyone, and that is that my new website is finally ready to launch. Here it is. This is savvywritesbooks.com, which I have linked in the description below. This is my one-stop shop website. As you guys know, I have a million projects going on with, this YouTube channel, my business Forever Home Friends, my books that I write, the novels that I write, the signed copies, my nonfiction books that I write, also my podcast and morning show, Your Morning Guru, and all the merch that I have for various things. I finally have everything consolidated. Everything is on this website, and it also leads to the Forever Home Friends site as well. This piece of my personal business directly relates to today's sponsor. I built this new website using today's sponsor, Zyro, which is a website builder that helps you easily build a professional website or e-commerce store. And guys, I really loved using Zyro to build this new website. The ability to use simple drag and drop editing while building my web pages made this process really easy for me. And as I always say, while my name is Savvy, I'm not tech savvy, so I was really happy to be able to build this page all by myself with Zyro's web building and editing tools. Right now is actually a really great time for Zyro to be sponsoring me because their holiday sale is currently going on. Don't miss out on Zyro's holiday sale, where you can use the limited time deal to get up to 72% off plus 3 months free with any yearly website plan. You can build your new website now. You can start today. You can use my code SAVVY or click the link in the description below, which will take you to that deal. Go ahead on over to zyro.com/special/savvywritesbooks, which is linked in my description below and in my pinned comment, to take advantage of Zyro's deal. So thank you so much again to Zyro for sponsoring today's video. I really do genuinely recommend their service because I had a fantastic time with it. So if it is something you're interested in and you want to get that deal, zyro.com/special/savvywritesbooks, linked in the description and the pinned comment. Thanks so much. Now that I, as a woman in business, have presented my new website to you, let's talk about how women are underrepresented in business in favor of guys named Dave. So first, what is the Dave rule? Well, according to the Wikipedia page for Dave rule, the Dave rule is an inside joke in Silicon Valley startup culture that posits that if a work team includes as many women as it does people named Dave, it has achieved acceptable gender balance. The joke is a reference to Silicon Valley's infamous gender gap. And then if you go to source number 2 right here, Wikipedia links to this article, which is called "Women Are Vastly Underrepresented in the Tech Sector." And guess who it's by? Can you guys guess who it's by? It's by a guy named Dave. Of course it's by a Dave. We got Daveception. Whoever's playing Dave Bingo, mark off Daveception. Dave's all the way down, y'all. Every Dave interacts with Daves. Now let's take a look at this article. According to data from various company reports charted for us by Statista, women only hold between 10 to 20% of the tech-related jobs at tech companies. In companies like Google, Twitter, Yahoo, Facebook, and LinkedIn, women account for about half of the non-tech jobs and about 1/3 of the total workforce. Still, you can easily see where there's room for improvement. Twitter may be facing the worst gender gap when it comes to tech jobs, but all of these major companies can do much better. This is something people often ask when I bring up, disparities in jobs between men and women and what that means. A lot of people say, well, do you think there should be quotas? Do you think you need to hire X number of men, X number of women, whatever, you need to have forced diversity in this company? And I don't necessarily think that that is helpful either. This is something I talked a lot about when I was reviewing Dave Rubin's book, where he tried to claim that sexism in the workplace didn't really exist and it was all based on choice. It's always a Dave. It's always a Dave. But when I was reviewing that book, one thing I said was that it's not just about whether there is an imbalance between genders, it's about why. So is this that just at this moment in time, due to random chance, more men than women want to go into tech jobs? If so, who the fuck cares? As long as everybody's happy, doesn't matter. But if you guys remember, a couple months back, I actually made a video talking about Activision Blizzard and the lawsuits that they faced based on sexism and sexual harassment in the workplace and things like that. And if we look at that example along with other examples of companies similar to them, we can see that it's not solely based on choice. There's also a level of pressure there. In that video, I cited emails from women that I got sharing their experience, not just about having worked in the video game development or tech industries, but also about why they chose not to go into those industries in the first place, which often isn't just as simple as a black and white, it's free choice, do whatever you want kind of thing, as it is that a lot of women experienced sexual harassment when they were in college first trying to study these things, or when they were first trying to be one of the few women in a group for something and they felt that a lot of the men were overpowering them, or they felt unsafe in certain environments due to men making them feel unwelcome. I just want to be extremely clear. I'm not saying that this is all men's fault or anything like that. I'm saying that this is a multifaceted issue where you have to really look into all of the various causes. And is sexism the one and only cause? No, I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of factors going on, but I think that we really need to dig deep to find out what those real solutions might be in these cases. And I think that there are lots of different things that we need to look at. I'm not here to say, well, it should be exactly 50% men, 50% women. That doesn't even account for a non-binary population. Non-binary people there are a lot fewer of them than there are of cis men and women. And it's like, at that, I'm not trying to say that everything needs to be an exact percentage to reflect the exact percentage of the population that demographic makes up. I'm just saying that when there's a trend over time leaning heavily one direction rather than another, it's probably worth looking into and seeing if there are reasons that is happening. And if a lot of women are saying they feel unwelcome in the tech industry, as a lot of women I've talked to have, then maybe we do need to start looking into some solutions. So here's the chart which shows women vastly underrepresented in Silicon Valley tech jobs, women not only having only 10% of the tech jobs, but also being only 30% of the total company. So thank you to this Dave for writing this article. At least there was one Dave doing something for us. Continuing on the Dave Rule Wikipedia page, it says, the concept was in use in the Carnegie Mellon School of Computer Science under the name Dave to Girl ratio or Dave to Female ratio as early as 1999. It was first documented in Silicon Valley, which employs many Carnegie Mellon alumni under the name Dave Rule in 2014 by Guardian newspaper correspondent Rory Carroll in an article about a sexual harassment lawsuit filed against dating application startup Tinder by a female former executive. So we are now going to look at what happened in the specific Tinder situation and how the Dave Rule came into play here. So this is an article from back in 2014 from The Guardian called Sexism in Silicon Valley, Tinder, the Dave Rule, and Tech's Glass Ceiling. Allegations of sexism from a former executive underline stark gender disparity in Silicon Valley and a culture seeking answers. Managers in Silicon Valley call it the Dave Rule. To assure proper gender balance, you must have at least as many women on your team as guys named Dave. It is an insider joke delivered, depending on who says it, with a smile or a wince, because women are indeed vastly underrepresented in the technology industry. It sounded even less funny this week after a female former executive of Tinder filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against the company. Whitney Wolf, the former vice president of marketing for the dating app, said Justin Mateen, the chief marketing officer, called her a whore, and that Sean Rad, the CEO, ignored the abuse when she complained. Tinder's parent company, IAC, has suspended Mateen 2014 pending an investigation, but that did little to contain accusations that Silicon Valley was a frat house culture hostile not just to women, but also to people of color, non-white people, elderly people. Apparently, Silicon Valley just seems to it seems to favor the young white men type, you know, the Mark Zuckerberg type, you're a 30-year-old prodigy. Then the article goes on to talk about how that May, which would have been of 2014, when Google published its first diversity report, revealing that 70% of its global workforce is male. Of its staff, 61% are white, 30% Asian, 3% Hispanic, and 2% Black. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Yahoo followed suit, revealing similar disparities. But interviews with tech workers and observers in San Francisco and the Bay Area underlined the multiple challenges in transforming the industry's culture and demographics. Socially awkward geeks struggled to make accomplished female coders feel welcome, he said. Some of the younger ones especially have a hard time relating to women as ordinary people. I never understand this argument, and maybe I'm just very naive and idealistic, which is a thing I say about myself a lot because it is true and I do just assume the best in people a lot, but I never understand the whole thing of like, socially awkward geeks have trouble around women. Like, most socially awkward geeks I know are women. How does being socially awkward or nerdy relate to being male at all? Like, how is that even relevant? So that's the thing I don't get, and that's why I think it's important to look a little more into the why of why women aren't taking as many of these jobs. Is there a harassment cause? Is that one piece of it and then there are additional things going on as well? I would imagine it's a very multifaceted issue. But I think the whole thing of like, oh, it's because a lot of men in this culture are socially awkward and nerdy and they have trouble around women. Well, a lot of people who are socially awkward and nerdy are women, so that doesn't account for why those women wouldn't also just be gravitating towards those jobs too. I'm not sure where this comes from. I imagine there's probably some type of historical context to this as well, because when you look over history and you see that, you know, over time, the majority of positions have been held by men historically, which again, there could be some implicit bias on the parts of hiring managers. We talk a lot about how a lot of times, because the US doesn't have guaranteed both maternity and paternity leave, which again, I think allowing paid time off for men who become new fathers would actually go a long way to evening this gap as well, because you have these situations where bosses will suddenly be afraid that, oh, if we hire a young woman, she might get pregnant, and then if she takes time off, our company is going to lose profit, because a lot of companies, it's all about profit as the bottom line, right? So that's a situation we get into, and that's illegal to discriminate in that way, but that doesn't mean people don't still do it and hide it. We see that, you know, we just talked about Dave Ramsey this week about how he discriminated against a pregnant employee and things like that. So you still do see these things a lot, and I think those are contributing factors as well. So I think to brush this into like, oh, it's social awkwardness is very weird and like just not accurate. Sarah Hayter, 28, a female programmer who headed a team at Twitter before moving to the anonymous app Secret, said the key was for women to start young and be tough. The best way to get more women in the industry is to have girls coding. It comes down to the small decisions you make as a child. I was always into geeky things and I started coding when I was 9. Hayter said women needed to show no fear in male-dominated environments. I'm physically not intimidated. If anyone gives me any crap, I just beat them up, she laughed. And that's the thing too, though, is like, I appreciate her attitude, but you also probably shouldn't be threatening to beat people up at work. I assume she's joking. If we want a safe work environment for all, the answer probably shouldn't just be, it's fine if men are violent. As a woman, you should just be violent too. Or just like nobody could be violent. She lamented that women often undersold themselves in wage negotiations, even if they were high performing. If managers don't take that into account, then women will be undercompensated. I think there is some truth to this. I think women sell themselves short a lot. And I'm not going to blame any individual woman for that. I don't think it's women's fault as a whole. And I know a lot of men who undersell themselves as well. So it's not a gender specific issue. But I have noticed that there is, you know, the ways that culture socializes young girls and young boys. I've noticed this as a teacher, because when I used to teach kids, I would sometimes substitute teach at this school that separated classes into here's a girls only class and here's a boys only class. Like the school wasn't one gender, but they separated the classes into one gender. And when I would teach a class of boys, and they were like 11, 12-year-old boys, and I would give them an assignment, they would instantly like do like a third of it and then rush up to me and be like, I'm done. I finished faster than him. Look at how good I did. I got everything right. And it's like, you didn't even do it yet. Calm down, sit down, go do it. A lot more of the girls that I gave the assignment to, they would raise their hand and be like, I don't understand this question. And I'd be like, well, what do you think it means? And then she would tell me what she thought it meant and was always like literally exactly right. I'd be like, you know what it means, have some confidence. Or someone would raise their hand and be like, I don't know this word. And I'd be like, okay, what word does it sound like? What other words do you know that look similar to it? What can you imagine it means? Oh, that's exactly what it meant. You knew what it meant the whole time. You just weren't confident. That's the thing. It's like, I noticed a lot of boys being overly competitive and overly confident, whereas I noticed a lot of girls being like apprehensive and afraid to to get it wrong. And I think that there's definitely a socialization aspect to that, right? Where they're like, boys will be boys culture, let the boys roughhouse, that's just kind of how they are. Whereas with girls, everybody expects them to be nice and to be gentle and things like that. And I'm not a particularly nice or gentle person, so I don't always fit in very well. But my point with that is, I think there are some cultural and social factors that start at a very young age that do cause women to lack some confidence in their ability to sell themselves as much as they should when it comes to negotiations or how much money they should be making and things like that. So I absolutely think that that's part of it. But I know that people like Dave Rubin, who says these kind of things in his book, will take that to mean, oh, so it's just women's fault that they're not making more money. If they just negotiated better, they would make more money. It's like, well, again, there are factors that go into this. Why, on the whole, are we seeing an epidemic of women underselling themselves to this level? Is it just something that, like, gender is stored in the balls and the ability to negotiate well is in your ball sack? Like, no, that's not what it is. It's that there's a lot more than meets the eye to all of these complex human interactions. In May, a group of 9 women in tech posted a manifesto in which they complained about being harassed, belittled, and groped. What we want most is for people to read and understand what death by 1,000 cuts feels like, and then understand why we feel sad and angry at the tech industry. We also want you to understand that more still needs to be done. And again, I think that women being afraid of being harassed or assaulted in certain ways, and because these things do happen, it definitely does, widen that gender gap in certain jobs. Fred Turner, a Stanford University expert on the technology industry and American cultural history, said Silicon Valley's entrepreneurs and managers espoused a meritocracy, but often used likeness to themselves as a shorthand for quality. Oh, he's like me, he must be good. And this is what I was getting at when I said a lot of jobs have historically been male, so a lot of men will hire other men, and it's not always a conscious bias. A lot of times we don't notice when we're in the majority. So for example, if I'm in a group with mostly women and we're all just hanging out and there's like 1 or 2 men, I might not even notice that there's a majority of women. But if I'm in a group and I'm one of like 1 or 2 women and there's like dozens of men, I will notice that the group is mostly men. Other way around, when this is me and Tyler and we're hanging out and there's a group of mostly men, he doesn't notice that there's a lack of women there. But if he's in a group of mostly women, then he'll notice. I think that's a thing. We often don't notice right away when we're in the majority in a situation because that's your own perspective, right? So I think that that's kind of a implicit bias that a lot of people have, like, oh, this is a majority male workplace, but as a man if mostly men are working in it and they're not even realizing that they're the majority, that could be part of the problem too. So just being mindful of what's going on and being conscious of what's even happening is probably the first step, and that can go a long way. So when I was searching for things about the Dave Rule and Silicon Valley specifically, I did find a lot of these things, but surprisingly, I found out about something similar happening in the UK as well. This doesn't seem to be solely a US problem. So I wanted to take a look at the Dave dominance, the dominance of Dave, the Dave majority going on in Britain as well. So this article is from Financial News London from 2018, and it's titled, "Daves Still Outnumber Female CEOs in FTSE 100. Wow. Female chief executives in the FTSE 100 are still outnumbered by bosses called David. The index of the UK's largest listed companies features just 7 female CEOs compared with 9 named David, according to data from diversity and inclusion agency Involve. Over the last 2 years, these figures have barely changed. At the end of the financial year 2016, Fortune reported that there were 8 Davids, 7 Steves, and 6 women holding FTSE 100 CEO roles. None of the female CEOs work in financial services. The lack of female leaders at the top of companies is confined to the largest companies, however. Data on small and medium enterprises published by the government last year showed 21% of the UK's smallest companies were led by women. Even 21%, that's still a strong minority, because it's like, I think I've heard make up about 51% of the population, so 21%, that's pretty low. Again, I'm not saying it has to be an exact replica or exact representation, but when you see a pattern of that much disparity over time, you start to wonder why and how these things are happening. So while I don't have the ability to fix Silicon Valley or bring about gender equality to the world, I do want to shout out some of my favorite women-owned small businesses that if you guys are still shopping for holiday gifts out there, maybe you can check some of those out. I also run a Facebook group called We Are the Real Boss Babes, and just to be clear, you don't have to be a woman to join that group. That group is welcoming to men, to non-binary people, to everyone. As long as your goal is to uplift each other and support small businesses, I am happy to have you in that group. However, the group is majority women, but everyone's welcome. So you can check out that Facebook group linked in the description below. I've been running it for over a year now, and we have a lot of really great discussions in there about just giving each other small business advice. And it's great because a lot of people I talk to have trouble finding mostly women small business groups that aren't overrun by MLM companies. And so I wanted to make one where it's like, no multi-level marketing companies allowed. This is just for talking about small businesses and giving each other advice and showing each other what we're working on, sharing our accomplishments and things like that. So you can join the We Are the Real Boss Babes small business group on my Facebook page, which is linked below, if you want to find tons of amazing small businesses to follow there. One of my rules that I like to follow when it comes to shopping for books and things like that, as you guys probably can tell, I read and buy a lot of books. A lot of times I end up buying a book by someone that I don't really like or want to support, but I want to review the book for my channel, and maybe I can't get it through the library or something like that. So for example, I did buy Ben Shapiro's book to read for your morning gurus, Ben Shapiro Week and things like that. And I'm also reading that for Reindeer Readathon. So when I buy a book by someone like Ben Shapiro, or I buy Dave Rubin's book to review on my channel, or I buy Jen Sincero's money book or something like that, I like to make sure that I buy it from a woman-owned local small business. The one that I default to most is Semicolon Bookstore in Chicago. They are a wonderful bookstore, which I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Semicolon Bookstore is the only bookstore owned by a Black woman in Chicago. And I just think it's a great store. They have a fantastic selection. I order their books online. Another bookstore that I love to support in Chicago and order things from is the Bookseller. That store's been great because I've actually had a book signing there in the past. I did a reading of Forever Home Friends books there on a local author night. They love supporting local authors and they love hosting local events. And Bookseller's fun because it's supposed to be a pun, because it's like bookseller, like they sell books, but it's also cellar, like wine cellar, because they also sell wine there that you can drink while you buy books and things like that. So highly recommend checking out Bookseller as well. Those are two of my favorite local bookstores to shop from. People ask, is it ethical to buy books on Amazon and things like that? And my answer to that is that it's complicated. I do buy books on Amazon because Amazon is a place where a lot of newer authors and smaller authors whose books are with small presses, or whose books are doing mostly ebook releases or things like that, whose books are not a big enough deal that most physical bookstores are ordering stock of them in the first place. A lot of those books are being sold on Amazon, and I still do want to support those authors. So my thing is, I'm going to do whatever is going to support a small business the most. So if you are an author and your book is exclusive to Amazon, I'll buy it from Amazon. But if your book is available in a local bookstore, I'll buy it there instead. So that's kind of how I approach this situation, because I want to make sure that we can all put our books out there into this world. I know we got onto the topic of books, but I was like, let's support small businesses and talk about women in business, and books was the first place I thought of because that's kind of what I do. My publisher for 90s Kids is a woman-owned small business called Muse Media. My publisher is a woman in business who's been working in the publishing industry for about 15 years now. And if you're interested in supporting that business, I mean, you can check out my book 90s Kids, or without me just selling and plugging my book to you and being Dave Hollis, you can just follow Muse Media on all of their social media pages like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything like that. So that's a way to help uplift women in small business this holiday season. But overall, I think that outside of those small things we can do to just support each other in this world, I don't really know the solution to making a more level playing field all across the board. I think a lot of those issues are systemic, and those are things we're going to have to work on slowly and periodically over time as we address those root causes, research more into what's happening and things like that. I really do think it's a massive issue that there is such a gender disparity that just being named Dave is more likely than being a woman, whether that's being a CEO in the UK or working in a tech startup in Silicon Valley. And I think a lot of that does have to do with cultural factors that go into influencing the ways that people behave, whether that's men behaving in an aggressive way or women not negotiating for as much pay or things like that. And I think that a lot of those factors are things that are going to be slow over time to change, but we do need to keep working on them, and we do need to keep supporting each other. If anyone else has suggestions for how to, help with these things, let me know in the comments below. But I just thought that the Dave rule would be an interesting way to wrap up the 12 Daves of Christmas. I really appreciate you guys doing the 12 Daves of Christmas with me this year. I had a lot of fun. I'm actually going to take a little break from videos now. I'm going to be doing holiday stuff with my family, and then I'm going to be working on some bigger video projects for early 2022. So this is actually going to be my last video premiere of 2021. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and that the Dave rule, it kind of combined a little bit of everything. Deep Daves, business analyst culture, talked about books a little bit, kind of have everything here. So I hope that that was a fun way to end my video premieres. I will still be streaming Your Morning Guru, the morning show, every morning. We're still going to be live every morning on that show throughout the rest of the year as well. But otherwise, I will see you guys on this channel in 2022 with some new videos. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming, a lot of business book reviews, we got some more deep dives, but mostly since I just did a ton of Daves, we're going to be doing some business book reviews. We got some anti-MLM videos coming. I've got a lot of great stuff in the works. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic holiday season. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you're having a fantastic Christmas time. I hope you have a happy new year coming up. And other than that, I'll see you again on the Your Morning Guru show on Monday. Thank you to Zyro for sponsoring this video. Check out the links in the description below. I hope you have a fantastic holiday season. Happy 12th day of Christmas. Bye.
Dave.
From the standpoint of ooh, you will not go unpunished.
You guys asked for it.